We talked a lot about competitiveness, affordability, and the workforce. And these are the exact things that the team is doing on a day-to-day basis in the halls of Trenton. So if you'll just bear with us for a moment, we're here for you. We want to make sure that you know who we are, who's advocating on behalf of the business community, along with all of our colleagues and partners who are here in the room, and I can't talk about and name them all. But I do want to introduce Ray Cantor, our Vice President of Government Affairs, Chris Emmaholtz, Vice President of Government Affairs, Alexis Bailey, Director of Government Affairs, and Kyle Sullender, our Director of Economic Policy Research, who again are working on all the initiatives that we talked about. I do want to also mention, and Aaron Fickner, who is with us, I don't know if he's still here earlier from the county colleges, the partnership that we have on building pathways with our community colleges that will incorporate all of our community partners from labor, business, academia, from 2 years private and technical, 4 years schools, and obviously our government partners as well. So we are trying to aggressively address this workforce challenge. We, in a way, are encouraged to hear from JP Morgan that everything that they highlighted are exactly the things that this BIA team has been studying, has been promoting, and telling our policymakers. So when Senator Tom Kaine says we have to have our voice out there, I can assure you that is exactly the message that we have been saying to everyone, that this affordability and competitiveness challenge is real, that New Jersey is an outlier. We still have the third highest unemployment rate in the nation. We have a lot of work to do. So I'm going to turn it over to Chris very quickly. Chris handles a lot of our budget and taxation issues. Chris, we've talked a lot about what we need to do to get the state's economy back on track. We talked about UI. We know that federal funds are available as well to address a lot of the challenges in the state. So do you mind just talking a little bit about, what you're working on in terms of getting the state back on a strong fiscal footing?
Thank you, Chrissy. Happy to. And before I start, for the past year and a half, I know everybody up here has been very busy working for our members, serving our members, but it's nice to actually see you. When we've been doing so much over Zoom, and I think I've seen everybody in this room over Zoom over the past year and a half, and it's nice to actually see you and shake your hand and give you a hug. So that's very nice to actually see our members is important, and it helps us do our job better. And part of it's also Chrissy driving your team and the way she does as well. But we know, anybody knows Chrissy, she's the hardest working person in Trenton, and she makes a better team for it. So what's going on in Trenton? Obviously, on the economic development side, there's many challenges that we're looking at, but we also have many opportunities. And we've heard the words transformational today. We've heard talking about potential, talking about what's coming next. And we're in this position, as Salomon Munoz said, we're not cash rich. We don't want to talk that way, but we are in a position where we have more cash on hand that the state has had for decades. And that gives us this transformational position that we're in where we can do something about it. And BIA has pushed very, very hard to any legislator, anybody in the governor's office that'll listen, is there's 3 areas of pro-growth spending where we think we stimulate the economy and make a difference for all of you and your businesses out there, whether it's a nonprofit, small business, major business, associations, chambers that we all work with. All of you need help. And if we do these 3 spending, we're going to help. Number 1 is infrastructure. Number 2 is workforce development. Number 3 is innovation. If we make our state's workforce better, and there's some areas where you can actually get like big bang for your buck. And if you're building things in colleges, such as new labs, it's workforce development, it's infrastructure, it's innovation. That's what we need to do for our state. And I want to see as much of our billions of dollars sitting there in the governor's office that the governor's got to make a decision on how to spend going in those 3 things. And if we're doing that in transformational ways, we're going to be helping all of you out there in the entire economy and everybody that's got a job in it. I also think it's important on the tax side of the economy is to think about where we are outliers. And we think back, talking about infrastructure, think back to the infrastructure tax deal that we made several years ago. We did a good job addressing, we were an outlier in gas taxes being low. We were an outlier in retirement taxes being way too high. And what we did is we kind of brought us back to the middle. Anywhere we can do to bring New Jersey's cost affordability back to the middle to make us not an outlier on the bad side, but kind of in the middle of the states. And I think we have some things, whether it's corporate taxes, guilty, as some of the corporations out there know all too well. Property tax issues. I know Senate President was up here talking about path to progress, but it comes down to affordability, and our local governments spend way too much money, and if we can do things to make our government processes more affordable, we can get back to us being the highest property taxes in the nation. We should not be the highest property tax in the nation and the highest corporate taxes in the nation at the same time. That's not good for small business, big business, employees, employers, anybody. So I think if we focus on those affordability outliers and we focus on spending in the right ways, we're going to improve our economy.
Great, thanks, Chris. And keeping on that affordability piece, Ray, who handles a lot of our energy and environment policy, we all know that energy, environment, mandates, costs, impact economic development. We hear folks say a lot that we want to have New Jersey be the California of the East Coast. NJBIA has been pushing for a very balanced approach in this critical area. Ray, can you tell us a little bit about what's going on in this particular area?
Absolutely, Chrissy. And in this area, it's all about affordability and it's all about predictability. We all have heard about the governor's policies of having a clean energy future, 100% clean energy by 2050. And we've all heard about, the windmills being built off our shores, which we're all supportive of, and enhanced solar, being developed throughout the state. But what we don't hear about is what all of that means and the other parts of the energy future. We know about wind and we know about solar, and we know we're moving toward electric vehicles, and our passenger vehicles. What we don't necessarily all realize is that the EP is about to, they proposed a rule, and they're about to adopt a rule to require all our trucks, heavy-duty trucks as well, to be electric vehicles or zero-emission vehicles, which are electric. But all of this also means that you need the infrastructure in order to do this. You need transmission lines, which are billions and billions of dollars. You need, distribution centers. You need a whole bunch of different infrastructure, changes in your housing, changes in your buildings, going from natural gas economy, which we have right now. We have 75% of our homes are heated by natural gas, another 10% by oil. We have obviously, our gasoline stations throughout the state. But as we move toward the governor's vision of a cleaner energy future and going away from what they want, natural gas and oil, et cetera, there are going to be tremendous costs. There are also going to be a lot of uncertainty because basically, while we all think wind and solar isn't all great, there are times when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine. And batteries are just not the answer, to get there. So there are a lot of questions about whether or not a clean energy future, as we're looking at it, is a reliable future. We've seen blackouts in California. We've seen Germany go through their, energy shortages. We've seen Germany, by the way, using more coal than ever before because, their reliance on intermittent sources of energy, aren't predictable and aren't reliable. So the two answers that we have, actually three things that we've been demanding as we move toward this is we want to know what the costs are. Is it going to be affordable? Because if you can't afford, your energy, then you really don't have, an economic, future, and people cannot afford to live in New Jersey. We want to make sure it's reliable. We want to make sure that when you turn on your lights, the lights actually come on. Again, these are things we've always taken for granted, but as we move toward an uncertain future, we don't know what those answers are, and we haven't gotten those answers yet. And that's what we continue to push for. And again, and the third part is feasibility. It's great to say we want all our trucks to be electric, but when it comes to heavy-duty trucks, the technology really isn't there right now to have long-haul heavy-duty trucks, based on, electricity, at least not in any affordable manner. So again, we know we need to decarbonize our economy, but we need to do so in a way that's affordable, that's reliable, and that is feasible. And that's what we've been pushing for from a policy perspective.
Yeah, thanks, Ray. And also, too, Alexis handles a lot of our labor policy. And we heard a lot earlier today about the disproportionate impact on women in the labor force right now. The Senate President during the legislative panel also had a conversation about the future of childcare, and I know that he and Assemblywoman Munoz had a bit of a dialogue back and forth about how to address childcare. Alexis, can you elaborate a little bit further on some of the initiatives that we're working on in this particular industry?
Yes, childcare is an extremely important industry. It's really the backbone of our entire economy. Right now, we're seeing that women's workforce participation is at the lowest rate it's been nationally in 3 decades. And a big part, as you heard from many of the speakers today, was it really relies on childcare and making sure that women in particular are able to get back to work. A big part, which I was happy to hear Senate President and Assemblywoman Munoz mention, is that the private sector really is extremely critical to make sure that, children of all ages have access to childcare. So one thing that we're really pushing for, especially going into the next session and working with Speaker Coughlin, as childcare is one of his big initiatives for the next session, is making sure that as we move towards universal pre-K and getting more children into preschool, that we make sure that the private sector is part of that model. And we have a mixed delivery system, because the private childcare setting, they're taking care of infants and toddlers, and if they don't have access to be able to also care for those 3 and 4-year-olds in the pre-K setting, they're not going to be able to afford to care for those infants and toddlers, effectively taking parents out of the workforce for the first 1 to 3 years of their child's life. So that's something that we're working with a bunch of different stakeholders in the childcare space to make sure that as we move forward, we make sure that the private sector is involved in this as well. And as Assemblywoman Munoz mentioned, these businesses are primarily owned and operated by women and minorities, and that's extremely important to make sure that they're able to stay in business. So it's something that we're working on, and going forward also looking into making sure that childcare payment subsidies can be given to childcare centers based on enrollment instead of attendance, because it's critical to provide a steady stream of income for those childcare centers.
Right. And Kyle, obviously heading up our research, we talked a lot about the enormous impact of workers over these last 18 months, and, how are we going to continue to remain competitive moving forward? I know that Rhonda had asked Jose from Choose New Jersey about what are the trends you're seeing in terms of the future of work, and NJBIA conducted a study on the future of work. So Kyle, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Absolutely, and let me just start by thanking everybody who's been here today, and those of you who have stuck around to the end, we appreciate it. Also, as the newest member of this team, let me just say how fortunate the business community in New Jersey really is to have these 4 folks alongside me working on their behalf. So now that I've secured my holiday bonus in 4 weeks, in terms of future work, there's certainly 2 different ways that I think we can look at it right now. It's where people work and then what kind of work people are doing. A recent Gallup survey released within the last 8 or 10 weeks showed that 67% of white-collar workers in America were still working from home in some capacity, either part-time or every day. That's a dramatic shift from where we were just 2 years ago. 90% of those workers said that they wanted to continue that arrangement, again, either in some capacity or full-time working from home. They wanted to continue that arrangement permanently. That's a dramatic shift from where we were 2 years ago. So back in March and April of 2020, there was a lot of discussion about, well, how long until we can return to normal after COVID? I think it's pretty clear at this stage that we won't be returning to the normal as it was in 2019 and the beginning of 2020. The paradigms of the workforce have shifted and the expectations of the workforce have shifted. So that's one way to look at the future of work. The second is the kind of work that people are doing. There was a World Economic Forum study released in the middle of 2020 that surveyed large companies throughout the world. 80% of the executives at those companies answered that they had increased the digitization of their processes just within that first phase of the pandemic. I think it was about half that said they had planned to continue that process regardless of how much longer the direct impact was, because they were seeing certain impacts in terms of their effectiveness and how they could get the job done. We've seen in previous economic downturns that companies do tend to rely more heavily on robotization and digitization when the availability of work is not as robust or when the labor market is tighter. And it certainly seems like that's going to be the case coming out of COVID as well. So as we look forward, we have to plan for the displacement of the workers who are going to be most impacted. For NJBIA, that means a really particular focus on this idea of upskilling and reskilling some of our lower skilled and lower waged workers who are most likely to be displaced by these economic changes. It may mean giving them additional opportunities to return to higher education. It may mean alternative programs. But when we talk to our members and when we look at surveys over and over again, what we see are that the skills most lacked by this cohort are not the technical skills, but the soft skills in communication and in business practices that employers are looking for. So ensuring as we go down a path of further automation, of further impacts from artificial intelligence and some other technological innovations, we have to make sure that this workforce is ready to adapt and ready to move horizontally across career paths and across businesses so that they can continue to be competitive and our state's economy can as well.
Thanks, Kyle. I'll work on that bonus for you. Thanks.
I'll hold you to it.
Okay. Folks, if you have any questions for us, I'd be happy to take them. But if not, I do want to mention as I'm looking around the room that we're not going to touch on every issue that we're working on, but I do want to, point out that there are a lot of different challenging bills that may move forward in lame duck and that do put more regulation on the business community, whether it's instituting, different labor harmony agreements that we're paying attention to, a prescription drug affordability board that essentially puts, prices on prescriptions. And folks, I don't think any of us would appreciate that in our respective industries. We definitely have our hands full moving forward there. And there was a lot of conversation about manufacturing and, we are partnering with the Manufacturing Extension Program to make sure that, the state is paying attention to those good paying jobs and that our manufacturers do play a critical space in New Jersey's economy. Not to mention all of the different things they talked about, regulations and predictability. And unfortunately, the legislature, despite having overwhelming support to relook at a revised red tape review commission was vetoed by the governor. Those are the things that we continue to talk about, with our policymakers moving forward and making sure that the budget doesn't continue to grow and be unsustainable. It's grew almost 25% over the last 4 years. And so from our perspective, we want to make sure that we're able to maintain the level of funding moving forward without having more tax increases. I know we talked to many of you about that impact of having the highest corporate business tax in the region, highest personal income taxes in the region, highest property taxes, which impact all of us. But those are really things that we're paying attention to on that very high macro level, and continue to talk to all the folks that were up here on the dais, and we'll do so throughout lame duck. We do have an interesting time coming up in January when, as was alluded to, we will have new leadership in the state Senate, and we will have new members in the New Jersey Assembly as well as in the New Jersey State Senate, and we will be sure to meet with them and communicate our policy initiatives and the business community's positions moving forward. So trust that we will do that, and it will be very interesting learning, what that trajectory will be, because we heard a lot about, the voters have spoken and that need for balance will be critical. We do, and I meant this, do wish and thank Senate President Steve Sweeney and Senator, Tom Kane for all of their efforts and distinguished service in the New Jersey legislature. So folks, any questions for us? Okay, yes, sir.
When it comes to upskilling, do we necessarily have to rely on college to do that because we are a service-oriented state, or do we have to get people to start doing more manual labor jobs?
Yeah, I think there's. You're certainly right that we don't have to rely on any one avenue of reskilling and upskilling, and there's no one path that would be correct for every worker. I think you heard the the Senate President kind of alluded to this during his remarks as well, right? Not funneling everybody down the same path if it's not necessarily right for them, and if it doesn't meet the needs of the economy, right? We don't need a bunch of lawyers during the economic downturn necessarily when there's a lack of manufacturing. So we have to always make sure that we're meeting our needs as well, not to discourage anybody from going back to law school. So certainly college is one way that upskilling and reskilling could be done, but BIA is always talking to partners in different spaces who are working in some cases on bringing it directly to workers in their current employment, whether it's via a training program or a training app on their phone. We're working with the community colleges to ensure pathways are available there as well. Again, not necessarily to go through the traditional degree program, but to reach those credentials that they would need to then transition into a steady career. So certainly there are a number of ways to achieve that upskilling and reskilling other than just that traditional four-year college route.
To your good question, and Kyle's 100% right with everything he said, but I think the BIA kind of theme on this has always been presenting a menu of options to workers out there from what they're thinking about in middle school, high school, post-secondary, on the job, that there's training options and education options at every turn that might be appropriate at different times in your life and different places in your life. And so Chrissy alluded to it, but the work that we're doing, and Kyle alluded to it as well, the work that we're doing with Aaron Fichtner, one of the award winners today, and the Council of County Colleges is very much like that. And yes, it's housed within the Council of County Colleges, and they're going to host these centers of innovation. But at the same time, they're going to bring together, and I would encourage all of you, if you have interest in workforce development issues, whether you're from the employer side or the training provider side, education provider side, please reach out to Chrissy and any one of us up here, because we'd love to get you involved in this initiative. We hope it's a transformational initiative for the state. As Chrissy alluded to, there was money in this budget that allowed this to go on. And so these collaboratives in the growth key industries in the state, and then these centers that are going to be created, are going to bring together higher ed, whether it's 2-year, 4-year, post-grad, K-12, whether it's traditional K-12, VOTEX, the important unions in our state that do so much, apprenticeships, private career schools, you name it. There is an important piece of the workforce development pipeline that's going to be brought together to create different different options that everybody has available to them, so that they can get trained the way that fits them, and that also it fits what employers need. And so we need to get employers as part of this process, so please reach out to us, but also the training providers that are in this room that are members of BIA and employers as well. We want as many people to be part of this array of options as possible.
Well, thank you, folks. I do want to take this moment to thank and acknowledge the team that I have the pleasure of working with each and every day. So thank you all. I know they work 24/7 on behalf of all of our membership, and I just can't express how appreciative I am of you going out every single day, no matter at what hour it is, and representing the business community. So thank you. And also to the folks that you don't see every day, to Danielle Wink, who is my right hand in the back, and also to Marcy for all of their hard work. It wouldn't be possible to get our message out without our great communication and marketing team. So Bob, Vin, thank you, and all your respective teams. And thank you for everyone who put together today's event from our events team. All of our partners who have joined us here today, and all of our members. We can't do it without you. We know these are critical times. We saw how severe things are in the state, and you have our commitment to be out there every single day representing the business community. You have our cell phone numbers. Don't hesitate to reach out. We're always available to assist in any way we can. So thank you to our panelists. Congratulations to our award winners. Thank you to our team, and thank you to all of our partners who made today possible. We'll see you soon. Thank you, everyone.